U.S. President Donald Trump plans to remove half of the 14,000 American troops stationed in Afghanistan. And the concern is growing over how this could affect the stability of the nation. It's been 17 years since the Taliban was removed from power in the country. But analysts are warning the pending U.S. withdrawal could embolden insurgent militants. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad met with the Taliban representatives on Tuesday. He has suggested a peace deal could be reached before Afghanistan's presidential elections next April. Now, for some more insight into the region, the politics, and what the future of Afghanistan could look like and what the American troop pullout means, let's turn now to Kamran Bukhari. Now, he's a national security and foreign policy specialist with the University of Ottawa's Professional Development Institute, and he joins us today from Washington. Kamran, thanks for making time for us today. I want to begin by getting your sense of the message President Trump is sending by removing half of the troops that have been stationed in Afghanistan.
So there's the message, Natasha, that's direct, that emboldening the jihadists. But beyond that, there's also the problem of the disarray within Washington, the disagreement with the president and, for example, General Jim Mattis, who's resigned, at this very critical juncture. So that's making it worse. That's telling the enemies of the United States that, look, the United States doesn't have its house in order. And so that's really bad.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Mattis because the analysis is that part of the reason Mattis left the administration is because of this decision to leave Syria. And so 2 days after the Syria decision, we're hearing about Afghanistan. What do you make of this pullout both from the Middle East, where the Americans have been stationed, also from South Asia with Afghanistan?
So I think that the president is having a hard time balancing his political imperatives, his domestic political imperatives, where he's promised to bring home troops. He promised to defeat ISIS, and he's trying to extract political mileage out of that. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, there is the geopolitical reality, the security reality in the region that, is basically goes against this entire policy of withdrawing troops. Now, we can debate, we can argue whether, these troops, what are they doing? They're not really in active combat role, they're in a support role. But nonetheless, there is a psychological effect that could be very damaging.
I want to talk about the troops, the American troops that have been stationed in Afghanistan. I think a lot of people forget how many of them there are there, but also what the heck they're doing there. So what is the purpose of the American presence there right now?
So, around 14,000 troops are not engaged in, active everyday combat role. When the Obama administration did the drawdown during its term in office, it was very clear that the Afghan forces were going to be doing the heavy lifting, and the United States forces would be doing support role, training, providing logistics, intelligence, occasional special operations, going out on patrol to try to give backup and support, close air support, and of course the drone capabilities and whatnot. So that's what the United States forces have been doing ever since the drawdown during the days of President Obama.
So if 7,000 of those troops leave, what does that mean for the stability of Afghanistan?
Well, I don't think, again, I'll distinguish between the physical reality on the ground and the psychological impact. So physically on the ground, we just have to see. There are no details as to what kind of forces are going to be pulled. Are these forces sitting inside, the U.S.-led coalition headquarters in Kabul? Are they at Bagram Air Base? Are they at some other facility in the country? What are they doing there? So since we don't have those details, we really can't say what will be the impact. But it's safe to say that because the heavy lifting is being done by Afghan forces, that it's not going to be as if the sky is falling. Now, having said that, pulling out troops, sends a very bad psychological message. It emboldens the Taliban, and I suspect that it's linked to the negotiations that the special envoy Zalmay Khalilzad is having with the Taliban.
Well, let's talk about that a bit because we've seen how this is played out in locations like Iraq and Syria because that vacuum can get filled by something worse than what you were trying to resolve in the first place. So not only is the Taliban still operating there, but now we've seen the rise of ISIS in South Asia. How concerned are you about that now developing further?
I'm very concerned about that. And because the Taliban do not enjoy a monopoly over the militancy in the country. And we do have ISIS. There's still Al-Qaeda out there. There are other groups that are not that large. And then, of course, we assume that the Taliban are a monolithic entity, but the reality is far from it. They're factionalized and they're different elements, different commanders doing their own show in different areas of the country. So this is the problem that if you embolden them, they're, already if we just talk about the Taliban, they apparently, control or have freedom of operation in half the country. So situation is going to get worse if they get emboldened. They'll try to escalate matters to the next level.
Okay, Kamran, we have less than a minute. I just want to get a quick sense from you if there's going to be another major international power stepping in to fill that vacuum possibly. Is it going to be Russia, China, India? What do you think?
I seriously doubt it. The Russians are not interested. They don't have the capability. They fought a long war in the 80s. They're not willing to go back in. The Chinese don't do this kind of stuff, and India is too far. I think what's going to happen is that the Iranians and the Pakistanis are going to duke it out.
Okay, we'll see if you're right. Kamran, as always, thanks so much for your insights.
My pleasure.